Hello again, and welcome back to the Daily Bread Bible Study. We are here for day 90 for Monday, March 30th, 2020, focusing on the end of the book of 1 Samuel, chapters 28 through 31. Today we will witness the death of King Saul and the end of the book of 1 Samuel. The path for the rise of God's king, David, will be opened, and more will happen, including an ominous visit from the prophet Samuel. In 1 Samuel 28, the soon-to-be King David flees into the territory of the king of Gath in the region of the Philistines. King Achish gives David many things in return for David's fighting on his behalf. Things are benefiting both parties until the Philistines decide to go to war with Israel. Achish said to David in 1 Samuel 28:1, "You know, of course, that you and your men are to go out with me in the army." David is put in a rough spot here by the king of Gath, one of the lords of the Philistines. He has sworn to not raise his hand against King Saul, God's anointed, yet at the same time he has enjoyed the protection of King Achish in Gath from King Saul. David merely comments, "Very well then, you shall know what your servant can do." David is going to go out into battle with his army. What else can he do? He's there with King Achish, and so he's going to go out to battle as they are moving towards fighting against Israel. David will be delivered from the situation, as we will see, but first we will have a brief jump back to go see King Saul, what he is up to. Back in Israel, King Saul sees the Philistine forces, and the Lord stopped communicating with him, and Saul is nervous to know how the battle will go. Saul still has trouble obeying God, and today is no exception. In Exodus 22:18, it says, "You shall not permit a female sorcerer to live." And expanding upon that in Deuteronomy, it says you must remain completely loyal to the Lord your God in Deuteronomy 18 verse 13, saying that whoever practices divination, a soothsayer, augur, sorcerer, one who casts spells, one who consults ghosts or spirits, or seeks oracle from the dead, whoever does these things is abhorrent to the Lord. It is because of such abhorrent practices that the Lord your God is driving them out before you. As it said in Deuteronomy, there as Moses was speaking to his people before they went and entered the promised land. Why this is important? Well, Saul decides that since he is already abhorrent to God, it is worth the risk of consulting a medium. Saul wants to save face with his people, though, and he recently expelled these quote-unquote taboo practitioners who consult the spirits. So Saul goes in disguise at night to a medium. After promising her that no punishment would come to her, he has her contact the deceased prophet Samuel, which is forbidden. 1 Samuel 28:13 through 14 says, "The woman said to Saul, 'I see a divine being coming out of the ground.' He said to her, 'What is his appearance?' She said, 'An old man is coming up. He is wrapped in a robe.'" Saul recognizes Samuel from this description. It is interesting to note about what the dead look like here. Samuel is still considered old, likely as Saul remembered him the last time that they met. Samuel comes up out of the ground, so he is not coming down from heaven as we would expect a divine being to do. This seems to fit the New Testament Sadducees, who say that there is no resurrection, thus the spirits and corpses will remain in the ground, which Jesus kind of corrects in Matthew 22:29 through 32. Jesus says, "You are wrong because you know neither the scripture nor the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. As for the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what is said to you by God? I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is God not of the dead, but of the living." So Jesus appears to think that the people in the ground are living, and that this resurrection of the dead, people will be like angels in heaven instead of like corpses in the ground. So I'm not exactly sure all the differences between these theologies, but it does seem that there's a little bit of discrepancy, especially for what we in our modern day Christianity conceptualize to be heaven and where spirits reside of people who have gone beyond. But going back to our story and the awoken spirit of Samuel, we hear the deceased prophet speak to Saul, saying these words in 1 Samuel 28:16. Samuel said, "Why then do you ask me, since the Lord has turned from you and become your enemy? Because you did not obey the voice of the Lord and did not carry out his fierce wrath against Amalek, therefore the Lord has done this thing to you today." Additionally, Samuel ominously states, "Tomorrow you and your sons shall be with me," aka dead and buried in the ground, and his spirit in the afterlife, which sounds more threatening than Jesus' promise there on the cross. In Luke 23:43, it says, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." Being stuck in the ground in this ghostly figure, or being with Jesus in paradise. So these visions of the afterlife, I think they look very different. You could argue that they look similar. It's just about perspective. But anyways, you'll have to wrestle with those discrepancies, those differences for yourself. In 1 Samuel 29, we see returning again to the Philistine army and David, that King Achish marches his troops together with the Philistine forces. And the other leaders are skeptical upon seeing David and say, "He shall not go down with us to battle, or else he may become an adversary to us in the battle." King Achish kind of concedes to his fellow Philistines and tells David to leave. David wants Achish to know that he would indeed fight on his behalf, yet also gets to obey the Lord and not lift up his hand against the Lord's anointed, aka King Saul. In 1 Samuel 30, moving on, David returns to Ziklag, only to find the place has been raided by the Amalekites. They had attacked Ziklag, burned it down, and taken captive the woman and all who were in it, both small and great, and they killed no one, but carried them off and went their way. The people wanted to stone David for this happening to their family, and David feels responsible for the loss of his followers. Yet, as it says in 1 Samuel 30 verse 6, he strengthened himself in the Lord, and he practiced resilience by turning to God. David, who obeys God's ways, unlike King Saul, then consults God via the priest Abiathar. David hears God respond, and unlike King Saul, receives a positive message. David takes 400 men to pursue the Amalekites, and they find an Amalekite servant who was left behind ill, and treat him with grace. He leads them to the Amalekite troops, and David's forces defeat the enemy. David brought back everyone and some more spoils. Some want to hoard the spoil of the plunder, but David calls his people to be generous, saying in 1 Samuel 30:24, "For the share of the one who goes down into the battle shall be the same as the share of the one who stays by the baggage. They shall share alike." In practicing his own words, David shares a part of the portion of his spoils with the elders of Judah. In 1 Samuel 31, another battle happens, but this time it does not go well for the people of Israel. The Philistines fight King Saul's forces at Mount Gilboa, and the losses are severe, including in 1 Samuel 31:2, the Philistines overtook Saul and his sons, and the Philistines killed Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchusah, the son of Saul. King Saul is badly wounded, even asking his armor bearer to kill him instead of letting his enemies do it. Declining to assist, King Saul took his own sword and fell upon it in 1 Samuel 31:4. The armor bearer waits to confirm Saul is dead and then does the same. The Israelites panic, vacating towns to the Philistines. The Philistines find Saul and desecrate his body before their God. Men of Jabesh Gilead, whom Saul rescued from the Ammonites in 1 Samuel 11, they show respect for King Saul and what he did, and rescue Saul and his sons' bodies. They bury them below a tamarisk tree in Jabesh. And with that, the reign of King Saul is over, and the rise of God's king is now here. David will be anointed king next time. So thank you for joining me for our discussion of 1 Samuel, and I look forward to discussing 2 Samuel with you next time.